Now we're going to get more into using color. I'm going to show you where you can find more colors, working with objects and so on. And you may even be used to, when you double click on these swatches that you see, you can select your own colors and so on. There's a lot to do with color in these programs, so that'll be for another time. When you're working with the type, in situations like we'll be working in with the, for example, your first project, a newsletter, you often want to manipulate the type frames to accommodate your copy in certain ways. So for example, you may want to have, in this case, let's say you had 3 articles and 3 intros to the articles. I'm just going to set this up very quickly. And while I'm doing it, I'm going to show you what I'm doing. I'm just making copies of these. I'm holding Option down. See my cursor doubles. Click, Shift, and drag. So that's Option, Shift, click and drag. I'm just doing that quickly. Don't worry about that. I'll come back to that in the future, but I'm just want to tell you what I'm doing while I do it. Now I'm holding Shift to select other items. So that's called shift selecting. If you have one item selected, you can select others. So I'm just going to adjust these to be even. Now I'm just going to draw a few boxes just to pretend these are images. Here I'm doing that Option, Shift, click and drag again. Okay, so don't worry about those key commands at the moment. We'll cover that in detail in other tutorials, but like I said, I just like to let you know what I'm doing as I do it, in case you're wondering what I just did. So I'm pretending these pink squares are images. These are article captions beneath. I'm going to delete some of this content for a moment. Now this might be an example of a layout. The thing is, with type, we want type to not be all in different frames when we can avoid it. Here we have an option where we can actually have one frame set to 3 columns. We don't need 3 separate text frames. That's inefficient. It can also cause a lot of other problems that we don't need. So I'm going to get rid of these. Actually, what I'm going to do is just go back, get rid of these, and I'm going to set this single frame to be 3 columns itself. So this is where, again, I've got the frame selected, and if you look up top, it's the object bar that we're seeing. That this whole bar along the top is all pertaining to this bar, or this frame. So I'm going to drag this across. Now I don't want it that long. I don't want my type traveling like that. I actually want 3 separate columns. So I'm going to, with it selected, I'm going to go up here to the number of columns. And you can see the little symbol there. And I'm going to show you another way to do this as well. So I'll click 2, 3. So now it's created those 3 even columns across. And this is all one frame. It's all one feed of text. If I were to reduce the size of this, you'll see that the text flows into the other parts of the frame. Okay, so that's a more efficient, more technically accurate, and dependable way to arrange the type. Now let's say I had these 3 captions. How do I get the text from this column into this one and then to this one? Well, you might be tempted to just do this. Return, 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 and so on. What that's actually doing is putting characters, they're hidden, and I can show you them by going to the type menu, show hidden characters. That just puts a bunch of returns in there. It's still type, we just can't see it. So that becomes a problem because now when I reduce my type frame, those returns have to go somewhere. So that's what I don't want to do. What I am going to do, I'm going to remove those returns and go right back to the way I had it by deleting. And I'm going to go, I think there was a Q there, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go to my type menu and I'm going to insert a break character, a column break. So now what I'm doing, I'm breaking the type to a new column. That's why it's a column break. If it was a frame break, that would mean there's linked frames and I would break to another frame. Don't worry about that right now. We're just working on the column break. So I break to that column and now I'll do the same thing here. Type, insert break character, column break. Now all we're doing is just moving type around, but we're doing it efficiently and we're keeping certain aspects of the type structure in place, such as the alignment of the baseline of the type. The baseline is the bottom of the what we call the lowercase of the type, but it's the main line. Like when you are learning to print, you're always printing on lined paper. Those lines are called the baselines. So we maintain that alignment. Now that those have been broken with a proper character, and you can see that little character right here, that's the break character. Now I can reduce the size of that frame. So a lot of working with these programs properly, professionally, is to be tidy with it. So that allowed me to clean this up. There's no point in me having excess here where I may be placing other images, logos, whatever. I have my type arranged. Now I've got it in a proper placement. And I'm just going to get rid of that extra space that I don't need. So that was creating the columns and then using the break character to move the type as I needed to. Now another way to create those columns is by going to the object menu and text frame options, or Command B. This is a very useful window, and it gives much of what we see up at the top, but it gives some more details, and there'll be things in here that we're looking at down the road as well. So the object menu kind of tricks people when it comes to type, because type isn't an object. However, the type frame is. So if we were to select the type, I'm going to cancel this, you can see we get the character panel up here. That's referring to the type, the character in the paragraphs. I go back, make sure I default to my main selection tool. I select the frame, that's an object. So that's why in the object menu, text frame options is where we're dealing with the frame itself. You can also see it as the container for the type. You're changing the container of the type. You're making other compartments within that container. And you're designating the way the type behaves within that container, where it sits, where it flows to, and so on. So it can be a little confusing, of course, because we think, well, we're working with this, we're working with the type. Not the moment we're working with the type frame. When I double click, highlight some type, now I'm working with the type. So again, takes some getting used to, won't take you long at all. It just takes practice. It takes a few moments of headache and figuring it out, and then you just start to see, okay, I get it. I know I'm in the type right now, and even with the blinking cursor there, I know I'm in the type, and now I'm working on the frame. And the necessary info is up there, the columns and so on. One of the best things when you're trying to learn these programs, and really specifically InDesign, because it can be quite technical, one of the best things to do is knowing what you want to do. That's it. Know, I want to get this to move there. I want this to look like this. Anything that you want to do, we can do. And it just takes asking or looking it up. And you'll find that the learning it's very cumulative quite quickly. So having, I would say, an objective, whether it's a sketch or an example. We're going to talk in class about looking up inspiration and ideas and things that can help guide your initial creative response to a project. Having something you want to do is the best way to figure out and learn how to do it. Just like I've never built a really large fence. However, were I to build a fence, I would know I want the fence to be this high. I want it to go from there to there. What's the first step? And I would ask the right person what I do, and then I start learning and I start building that fence slowly. Layouts, especially with text formatting, is very much the same. You just need that objective. You need that sort of vision in mind, which can be in the form of a sketch or an example that you've saved for reference, and then you work from there. Finally, I'm just going to show you one more thing while we're in here, and then we'll move into closing off this tutorial. Okay, so I'm going to show you the direct select cursor. We talked about the main cursor at the beginning of the tutorial being the default, the one you should be going to. Now I'm going to talk about the direct select, which it's a selection cursor, but it lets you go in and very specifically select portions of an object. So you can see right there, I selected the line. See my cursor changes. It's telling me I'm on the line. I'm just hovering above it, and it has the little line symbol. Now when I click and drag, I'm changing the line. It'll do the same thing for anchor points. An anchor is this little point at the edge of that frame. So I can do anything I want with that. If I wanted to move it straight up and down or straight across, I would hold my shift key while I'm doing that. And the shift key essentially is doing what's called constraining my movements, keeping them in line. So hold shift for up and down or left and right. So the direct select is great for that, because sometimes we want to do creative things with our shapes, our type, any aspect of our layout, and that allows me even to change the shape of the text frame, if I wanted to do that. Now, there's not much logic into what I just did. However, you can see where maybe you want a larger frame to be flowing along the lines of along the edge of a shape or something. We can do that. In fact, I'm going to try that now. I'm going to just change this back to a single column, and I'm going to fill it again with placeholder. And it probably actually filled because I have a few things going on here. So let me clear out these break characters. There we go. There we are. Okay, so now I'm going to fill that up. So let's say I wanted to make, I'm just going to clean this out to show you. I wanted to make part of this page sort of like a triangle. I made a square, that shape. Don't worry about the color now. We can change that later. In fact, I'm going to do that because it's a little bright. And I'm going to use the direct select. And you'll see now it's going to tell me I'm on that anchor point. But there's something happening. It's moving the whole thing. That's because I made it and selected it. Remember, I suggested clicking off. So it's always great once you select another selection, a tool, click off and then go back in and restart. So if I wanted to bring this out like that. I'm holding shift, by the way. I'll bring it to about here. Now let's say I wanted my type to match that line. Well, my type is in behind, so that's the first thing that I don't want to have hidden type. And I want it to go along the same angle of this. Well, that's where I can do a few things. First of all, I'm going to bring this type to the front. I'm going to right click and go to Arrange. And I use key commands for this myself, so I often have to search for it a bit, but I'm going to bring that to the front. I can bring it forward one item at a time, and that's basically their timing in which they're put on the page discerns what order they're in. But I'm going to bring this right to the front. And now I'm going to go to my direct select, click off, and I'll click this anchor point. The cursor is showing me the little white box. Hold shift, I'll move this over to there, and I'll move this, holding shift again, over to there. Now you're going to notice something here. There is this little warning, and it's also showing down at the bottom of my page one error. These are things, I'll talk about this further in tutorials coming up, but you're going to see this. This will be the main error that many of you make while learning this program, while working on something like this. That is telling me that there's type in there that I can't see. Now I know that it's telling me that because I know the program. However, if I wanted to understand what is this error, I'm going to double click on the word error. And it's saying you have an error in your text. Well, I'm going to open that, double click, and it says I have overset text. So it's talking about this right here. Overset means there's text that's going beyond, it's oversetting the frame, the visible area of that frame. So I'm going to double click on that, and it's saying on a text frame, one of them. So I'll do double click that, and it actually moves that to center screen, just so we know which frame it's pertaining to. So I'm going to pull that down, make sure, so I still don't have enough room for all the text. So I would have to, if this was the space I wanted to keep my text in, I'd have to actually go in and eliminate some of that content. I'm going to do that now. Now on the Macs, you can delete, or you can do what's called forward deleting ahead of the cursor. I'm going to hold the function key down, which is the key in the lower left of your keyboard. This is a very handy thing. Hold function down, the very lower left key on your keyboard, and press delete while I'm holding that down. That's like on PCs, that other delete key that's near the keypad, near the number pad, that does forward delete. Apples don't have that, so you have to do function delete to do the forward deleting. Okay, so I've taken away the type that was hidden, and now you can see my warning is gone there. I have no errors, which is very important. We never want errors. And they're gone from the error window, which is called pre-flighting. Don't worry about the title of that. That's just the window for these errors. Now, you may have errors while you're working on your file. That's totally fine. You're working on it, you're going to get to those items. But in the end, when you're saving this, you're saving it out as a PDF, or you're sending it to production, whatever, you want to make sure you have 0 errors. So now I've eliminated that. I'm going to go back to my direct select cursor, and I'll click off. Now I'll hover over that anchor. I'm going to hold shift to keep it in line, and there we go. So now if I press W, so that's just a quick example of how we can use that to manipulate things. I'm just going to select this because I want to show you something. See this line here? We want to try to avoid that. I'm going to go back to working mode. We want to try to avoid having strokes on shapes like that. So how would I get rid of that? I'm going to go up here. Here's my fill. I'm going to turn off the stroke. I'm going to select none. And that'll go away. And that'll give me a much cleaner look. Okay, so there's so much more that we could do with this, and there's going to be a lot more that we do. However, this gives you a little bit, if you can follow along with all these little things and form the necessary habits, catch those little steps here and there, quite honestly, it will not take you that long before you see that you're learning the program. This isn't about memorizing. It's not about knowing what to do at every turn. There's no way to do either of those. What it is you have an objective, you have a sketch, you have an idea, and then from there, you start to figure out one piece at a time. I want this to be there. How do I get that there? I want this shape. How do I make that shape? And so on. And you'll see that your ability with this program can work quite well very quickly. And if you're ever in doubt, I'll say if I can do it, you can absolutely do it, because I was quite poor at learning computers when they first came out. Okay, so, and by the way, we did go over a lot through this tutorial. This is a long tutorial. Most are. That's why we have 3-hour classes. But going over a lot doesn't mean, again, that you're expected to remember or be able to do every single part of it. You just need to generate your awareness on what the program can do. And from that, you'll start to realize that your creativity doesn't need to be hindered by what you may not know. So don't limit your ideas just because you may not know how to execute them. That's where I help you. That's where I can very quickly come in and show you how we can get your projects done and get your ideas out, okay? So I'm going to make sure I save this. I'm just going to do save. And I need to do what's called packaging the file. Now, in the class, if we're actually in school, we have to do what's called packaging, because we can't leave our files on the computers. The school computers they don't keep our files. We have to get it off the computer, whether we email it to ourselves or put it on our own USB and so on. In this case, if you are working from home and you're not at the school, you are working on a single computer and everything pertaining to that file is still there. But you do need to know how to package files. And what packaging does is it collects all aspects of that file. It collects all of the images, the typefaces, anything pertaining to that document, it brings into one folder. It's a great thing to do, even if you're on a single computer, you do it, you package the file, and then you keep working on that file. But absolutely in the school environment, or even in a workplace, it's imperative. So I'm going to show you that in the next segment of this tutorial.